Hello, Shiver Seekers. Are you ready to follow us into the unknown? I'm Cynthia.
And I'm Stephanie. You have found the Dark Oak. Today we discuss the 1985 Thanksgiving Day Blount family bombing. Even though a suspect was tried and convicted, they were eventually cleared of all charges, and the case remains unsolved to this day.
Welcome to the Dark Oak, the mystery podcast with purpose. Each month through our charity, the Branch of Hope Foundation, we give a portion of our proceeds from our Patreon and our sponsors to a nonprofit related to the first episode of the month. To find out more details, hang out until the end of this episode or check out our website, thedarkoak.com.
Okay, so happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, although it sounds like you're going to really bring us down, Stephanie. I mean, it's Thanksgiving Eve when this episode airs, and
Sorry, family bombing.
lovely. Okay.
There's no way to sugarcoat this. This is going to be kind of brutal.
All right. Well, tis the season.
Just the season. Well, okay, let's talk about Thanksgiving for just a moment. I actually have something kind of fun we're doing this year. So, as you're aware, I don't know if everyone's aware, but I have a one-eyed turkey named Becky.
Yes.
And I love her to bits, like absolutely to bits. So she had an eye infection that unfortunately left one of her eyes ulcerated. So I took her to my turkey vet, who was also
there are such things as turkey vets, I've learned.
It's actually the same vet that French Toast goes to, and my bunnies and my guinea pigs and the pig vet. Yes, but also my turkey, and we had her eye enucleated. So we had her eye removed. So she's my one-eyed turkey named Becky. And I love her so much. She actually has a little tile tracker where I can,
of course,
track her. Doesn't everyone track their turkeys?
Yes.
I had several other turkey hens, but they wound up getting broody, meaning they wanted to have babies. And so they would go into the woods around my house and make a nest with their eggs, which, I mean, in itself is not a bad thing. I don't care if they go in the woods, but they're so well camouflaged, I wasn't able to find them to bring them in at night. And we have coyotes. And so I went
and bears
and wild boar and raccoons, and everything wants to eat turkey.
Mm-hmm.
So I lost some of my sweet girls. And so I'm so committed to not losing Becky that I have my little tracker where I go out and find her. So I'm actually looking forward to celebrating Thanksgiving and also Becky Pardon Day tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I plan on spoiling Becky with all the goodies. So I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to make for. I'll probably have the kids make some kind of like 7-layer something with some veggies and some mashed potatoes and things for Becky.
Adorable.
So
I love it.
We're going to celebrate Becky's Day.
That reminds me when my now almost 21-year-old son was little, and I guess we were talking about what we were going to be having that Thanksgiving. And I told him he realized that we eat turkey on Thanksgiving.
Right.
And then he realized that turkey that you eat is actually turkey, the animal. And he was so upset. He could not believe it and declared that from then on we would eat spaghetti on Thanksgiving.
Oh, I have to say, I am actually mostly a fan of all the vegetarian sides more than I am. So we don't process any of our animals. So I don't want anyone to think that Becky's only pardoned because she's Becky.
Right.
Every animal on my property
they're all pets.
Yeah,
all hundreds of them.
Every one of them. But I don't get to spoil all the turkeys, just my turkey.
Right.
So that's where we are.
Yeah.
So I hope that I have lightened the mood a bit with the story of Becky, my one-eyed turkey, because from here on out, it's going to be bleak. The rest of this is it's all downhill from here. So I hope that your mashed potatoes and gravy make up for this terrible story that I'm about to tell you.
All right. Well, I am just like all geared up, Stephanie. So let's just get this over with. I mean, it's my favorite meal of the year. I don't really care about the turkey, but I'm with you on the stuffing and the sides.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's just go ahead and ruin it.
Okay, let's get into it. So on the night of November 28th, 1985, Thanksgiving, several members of the Blount family had gathered at a family trailer at the Hilltop Mobile Home Park that lay in the suburbs of Fort Worth, Texas. The gathering consisted of Joe Blount, a skilled mechanic, Joe's wife, Susan, Joe and Susan's children, Robert and Angela, Joe's brother, Carl, and Carl's estranged son, Michael Columbus. So 6 people in total, 3 adults, 3 teenagers. The family sat down and ate dinner between 4 and 5. After dinner was finished, Carl went home. At 9 p.m. that night, Susan went for a lie down, probably because she's been cooking all the food for everyone. She's the only mother in this situation, so I'm just saying.
Isn't she the only woman in this situation?
Well, yeah, that's true, because Angela's 15. So, yes.
So
Maybe she had some help. Maybe. I don't know.
we can only hope.
But so they finished eating at 5, and then at 9, she was finally done cleaning up the kitchen.
Oh, Thanksgiving. Yes. You're bringing, I'm having flashbacks about what my dates are, or I'm having flash forwards.
Flash forward, exactly. You're envisioning it already.
Oh, I'm already tired.
So at 9 p.m., Susan announced she was going to go lay down. And Joe said, you know what? I think I have all this energy. I think I'm going to take the 3 teenagers down to the convenience store and I'm going to let them pick out some ice cream and I'm just going to pick up some beer for myself.
Okay.
So Susan said, bye-bye. And she went to go lay down.
Take your time.
Take your time. Susan lied down and almost immediately went to sleep. And at some point, she thought she heard someone knock on the door, but she looked outside and didn't see anyone. So she just laid back down and went to sleep. When the others returned to the trailer around 20 minutes after they had left, so they weren't gone that long.
And she didn't sleep very long.
And she didn't sleep very long either. They found a tan briefcase sitting at the door. The 3 teenagers were excited that the briefcase may contain some kind of valuables or money, and they brought it inside. And at a minimum, they expected that they could figure out who it belonged to and return it.
Right.
Angela immediately set it down in the living room, opened it, and the bomb inside detonated.
Oh.
Joe Blount, age 44, Angela, age 15, and Michael, age 18, were all killed instantly by the blast. Robert, who was only 14 at the time, survived the blast despite being close by. However, he sustained injuries from burns and exploding glass and wound up being hospitalized for weeks. Insanely, his plastic slippers melted to his feet.
Oh, no.
Because of the heat of the blast.
Oh, no.
Susan Blount was awoken by the blast and screams. A December 7th article in the Fort Worth Star-Telegram said she, quote, ran into the hall and saw bodies in her living room, end quote. Police were quickly on the scene and spent several months combing through the blast-damaged trailer. Pieces of the bomb collected from the burned-out trailer were sent to an expert who was able to identify the type of bomb used, but this information was not immediately shared with the public. Hundreds of people were questioned, but police found zero reason as to why someone would have wanted to harm the Blounts. The family had recently moved to Texas from Washington so that Joe could care for his ailing father, who had recently had a stroke. Joe was an upstanding businessman, and the family was involved in their Latter-day Saints church. Quote, we have looked at it from every possible angle and have been unable to find any kind of motive at all, said Agent Mike Russell of the Fort Worth office of the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. We've tried to ascertain if it was a crime of passion, revenge, murder for hire, any of those things. To tell you the truth, we've not been able to find any kind of motive at all. I'm leaning towards the fact that the wrong people were killed strictly because there is no obvious motive.
I don't know why, but somehow that makes it even more devastating, it feels like.
I agree. I completely agree with you. Based on what investigators were reporting, a solid theory began to become widely reported that the bomb had been left at the wrong trailer, which prevented identifying the intended victim and therefore the perpetrator.
Wow.
And of course, this made the investigation almost impossible.
Sure. Yeah, because you can't point back to it, goes back to nobody.
If you don't know the targets, how could you even begin to find out who would have wanted to harm them? Bill Foster, an investigator with the district attorney's office, said, quote, "We believe it had something to do with narcotics. We believe that the wrong house might have gotten targeted," end quote.
That is so just awful.
And there is where the case stayed for 10 years.
Wow.
No movement in the case until it was reinvigorated by an unlikely source. On the morning of April 19th, 1995, an ex-Army soldier and security guard named Timothy McVeigh
Oh,
parked a rented Ryder truck in front of the Alfred P. Murray Federal Building in downtown Oklahoma City. Inside the vehicle was a powerful bomb made out of a deadly cocktail of agricultural fertilizer, diesel fuel, and other chemicals. McVeigh got out, locked the door, and headed towards his getaway car. He ignited one timed fuse and then another. Within moments, the surrounding area looked like a war zone. 168 souls lost, including 19 children, with several hundred more injured. It was the worst act of homegrown terrorism in the nation's history. On April 20th, the rear axle of the Ryder truck was located, which yielded a vehicle identification number that was traced to a body shop in Junction City, Kansas. Employees at the shop helped the FBI quickly put together a composite drawing of the man who had rented the van. Agents showed the drawing around town, and local hotel employees supplied the name Tim McVeigh. Agents found traces of the chemicals used in the explosion on McVeigh's clothes and a business card on which McVeigh had suspiciously scribbled, quote, "TNT at $5 a stick. Need more," end quote. I mean, just deplorable. They learned about McVeigh's extremist ideologies and his anger over the events at Waco 2 years earlier. They discovered that a friend of McVeigh's named Terry Nichols helped build the bomb, and that another man, Michael Fortier, was aware of the bomb plot. The bombing was quickly solved, but the investigation turned out to be one of the most exhaustive in FBI history. Because of the 1995 Oklahoma bombing tragedy, public outcry demanded that police were given new powers and funding to investigate domestic terrorism. As a result, in June of 1997, the unsolved Blount family bombing was reopened and a new task force appointed.
That's incredible. I didn't realize what good that ended up doing, but I do distinctly remember the Oklahoma City bombing. My father was in law enforcement and had some affiliations with some of what was going on there. And I remember I was only 13, but I remember that being like the first major, really scary, well, like you said, the worst domestic terrorist attack we've ever had here. And I remember that distinctly.
Right. And this was one of, if not the oldest, unsolved bombing case that they had. And so this was one of the ones that they opened first.
That's amazing. I didn't know that. I did not know the Oklahoma City bombing led to this new task force and this new attention. So that's amazing.
It is amazing. It really is. Now, during this reinvestigation, a man named Charles Jack Ferris came forward, telling authorities that his cellmate had confessed to having carried out the Blount family bombing. His cellmate's name was Michael Roy Toney. Okay, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Michael Roy Toney, but he's going to play a pretty big part in the story. He was born on December 29th, 1965 in Cottonwood, California. His father abandoned the family early in Michael's life, and his mother worked in several local taverns to support the family. During his early life, Michael and his brothers and their mother were often beaten and abused by the men their mother brought home. Like, really bad stuff. And this is a small trigger warning for this next section for child abuse, so listen with care. But Michael would later say that to escape the worst of the abuse, he would hide in a shed in the back of their property for hours. Unfortunately, though, the strategy didn't always work. When Michael was 9 or 10, he was strapped to a chair by one of his mother's boyfriends who duct taped his wrists and set fire to his hands.
Oh, okay. All right.
Sorry. Listen with care.
Well, I can't.
Sorry. I only have one more example and then we'll move on from that because it's horrible for me as well. But I do feel like it's important to talk about some of his experiences. When he was 15, another one of his mother's boyfriends attacked him with a fishing gaff and gouged a huge hole in his hip. Right after this, he quit school before even entering the 10th grade and left for Texas, settling down in Hurst, Euless, Bedford area of Tarrant County. So he moved over to Texas. While he was living in Texas, he married a woman named Kim, and they moved in together. Michael had several run-ins with the law during his life, primarily for burglary and theft, and he was paroled several times, often violating parole shortly after. In 1997, he was arrested and held pending trial for another burglary he had committed in 1993. While there, Michael was held in a cell with our informant, this Charles Jack Ferris. According to Ferris, they got talking about the Blount family bombing, and during the conversation, Michael told Ferris that he was the one responsible. Ferris immediately told the Parker County authorities and was then released from jail for telling authorities that Tony had confessed to him.
Okay, well.
So there's that. After Ferris told authorities, the investigators questioned Tony's then ex-wife, Kim. According to police records, Kim initially told prosecutors that, quote, Michael killing people in a bomb, that would be nuts, end quote. But then Kim decided to do some research on the case on her own, and after discovering the seriousness of the crime, she called back federal agents and decided to tell her story about how Michael had participated in the bombing. Soon after, Michael Tony was indicted for capital murder.
Wow.
Based on
an informant who had a little motivation.
And
a wife who
questionable motivations, right? So you already see this is not the best situation here.
And I mean, I really hope he didn't turn out to be the bomber, because I feel a lot of sympathy for Michael. I mean, he's making some bad choices here, but
tough.
Yeah,
tough. While the authorities were deciding whether or not to take Michael to trial, they learned that Ferris had changed his story. Ferris had seen a news story about Michael being indicted for capital murder for the bombing, and he told police that the two of them had come up with the story in their cell to get one of them out on early release.
Okay.
However, nothing changed, and the trial against Michael Tony commenced on May of 1999 in Fort Worth, Texas. What do they have to go on here? How is this even happening?
I wonder if they just want somebody to blame, like if they want to get it off their list, because now they've opened this case that's really old, that probably maybe none of them.
And there's a lot of attention on.
Right. And maybe none of them even worked at the time, so it doesn't affect them. I mean, I'm just theorizing here, but you know what I mean? This isn't a case that's like fresh to them. It's just something old they have to check off their list.
But remember, it's a new task force. New people were hired to handle these like domestic terrorist bombings. So to me, I don't know.
They should have had the motivation to like actually want to get the job done properly.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But they moved ahead with Michael Tony. In an interview after Michael's arrest, agents investigating the bombing admitted they didn't know for certain why he might have planted the bomb. Quote, "That's one of the unanswered questions. We have a very solid criminal case against Tony, and that doesn't prohibit us from proceeding. And indeed, we are going forward with the case," said federal agent Bart McIntyre of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms.
Okay, there are 3 things that I know that are required for a crime: a method, a motive, and the opportunity. Those are like the 3 things that you have to kind of look for before you can hold somebody responsible.
Not according to federal agent Bart McIntyre of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Okay. The trial began with Susan and Robert Blount giving their testimony as to what happened that day, which I imagine was devastating.
Well, you've got
especially
one
you have a 14-year-old
who I'm assuming has literal physical scars from the worst day of his life, and then his poor mother who
exactly. So I imagine that was very emotional to hear those testimonies.
Oh, it's awful.
Yeah. Then the testimony of Michael Tony's now ex-wife, Kim, who is questionable already, in my opinion.
Well, what would be her motive? Because she didn't have anything necessarily to gain other than maybe like attention, and she just like read about the story and
We'll talk about that a little later. There are
okay.
some theories as to what happened. And again, there are some people that still think that Michael Tony is guilty. So
Sure, but first she said, "No way,
I
that's
just think
nuts."
whether he is or he isn't, I think they're proceeding incorrectly, is how
Well,
I
it sounds
feel.
like they have no evidence.
Right. Like, if you really think he's guilty, then find more evidence and
Right.
prove it.
Because there's this thing called double jeopardy.
Bingo.
Mm.
So they had his ex-wife. Then they also bring in his now ex-best friend to testify against him. And they bring in another cellmate. His ex-wife said that her, Michael, and his best friend, Chris Meeks, went to a propane shop that was adjacent to the Hilltop Mobile Home Park. She says that Michael got out of the truck with the briefcase and disappeared. She then says he returned to the truck without the briefcase, and then they went to the nature center and stayed for several hours. Her testimony also includes that Michael shot a beaver with a rifle while they were there at the nature center. A cellmate of Michael Tony, Finis Blankenship, testified that Michael told him that he was paid $5,000 for the murder. Blankenship also said that Michael reported the murders were part of a drug-related hit, but the bomb was put on the wrong doorstep. Prosecutors used this testimony in the second phase of the trial, which helped the jury to decide whether Michael deserved to be executed. This testimony showed the jury that Michael had a motive for the crime. The motive, remember, which they said
they couldn't find.
And all of a sudden, this cellmate has come up with this motive. Michael was put on the stand and testified that he didn't know the trailer park existed until shortly before his 1997 arrest. He also disputed his ex-wife and best friend's testimony that he had been driving a truck on the night of November 28th, as he claimed he hadn't bought the truck until December 13th.
He should be able to prove that. There should be documentation.
Sure should. Despite these claims, Michael Roy Tony was found guilty and sentenced to death.
Wow.
His being sentenced to death relied mostly on his cellmate's testimony that the crime had been premeditated and related to organized crime.
Okay.
Not long after Michael was convicted and sentenced, discrepancies were shockingly discovered in the case. Shocking. Are you shocked?
I'm shocked he was convicted.
Oh, yeah. Let's start with that.
Like, I'm really actually kind of disturbed. I mean, I'm thinking, what do they have that we don't know about? Like,
now, I know you remember Blankenship, the one that said, oh, yeah, he got paid $5,000, but he put it on the wrong doorstep.
Right.
Well, it turns out he was facing 2 counts of indecency with a child and habitual criminal charges. He agreed to testify against Michael Tony in exchange for having the charges dropped.
Okay, how can we take any of these testimonies seriously when they are, I mean, they have something to gain?
Yeah, Blankenship later admitted the entire thing was a lie. He made the entire thing up.
And that gave him the motive.
Yes, that's what gave him the sentencing that he had. As for Chris Meeks, remember this best friend? And remember, he was supposedly with the Tonys the night of the bombing, right? His testimony didn't coincide with any of Kim Tony's testimony. As a matter of fact, Meeks changed his story 4 times. At first, he told investigators, as well as the grand jury, that he knew nothing about the bombing. He also failed a polygraph test. In 2001, he signed an affidavit taking back the things he said during his testimony. He wrote, quote, "My testimony about the events that happened on Thanksgiving Day, 1985, may not have happened on that day." End quote.
These people are just slime balls.
All of them.
Sell out,
including the prosecutors.
I'm going to sell out my best friend.
I know. It was also proven that the truck Michael had supposedly been driving on November 8th, indeed, he had not purchased it until December.
Okay. Well, I mean, what are we doing here? What are we doing here?
What are we even doing here? In addition, the Tarrant County District Attorney's Office was found to have withheld 14 pieces of evidence from the defense that would have exonerated Michael Roy Tony.
That's a Bradley violation.
This is all bad. This is all bad. In March of 2003, Justice Denied magazine published a lengthy letter written by Michael Toney. It dissects the case, like his entire trial, point by point, discrediting each of the so-called witnesses and their points of testimony. And he attempts to kind of correct the misinformation in a very well-written article. And I'm not going to read all of it, but I want to read you a little excerpt here. Quote, since the trial, my family and I have received numerous phone calls and letters from people saying they know I'm innocent because they know who did the bombing and why it was done. I believe the fact that no one could ever determine the motive is the reason they couldn't solve the crime. I've been in contact with these people who wrote and called my family. They have told me what the motive was, who did it, and why the motive was never determined. Yes, I have learned who the real murderers are, but they will remain free to commit more murders unless the investigation is reopened. No one will listen to me because the case has been closed. The case has been closed, but the crime is not solved. The people who committed this terrible crime live in the Fort Worth area. As far as I'm concerned, no one is safe until the real murderers are brought to justice. I'm doing everything I can to try to make that happen. The Blount family deserves to know the truth, and they deserve the real murderers to be brought to justice. I've never in my life been to the scene of this crime. I don't know the victims. I've never even seen a bomb. I know the exact truth, but it didn't make any difference. I'm only 34 years old. In 1985, I would have been only 19 years old. When they first accused me, I thought it was absolutely ludicrous. It defies common sense. I believe the state and the ATF used me as a pawn to close a case they couldn't solve. Well, I'm not going to sit back and let them murder an innocent man if I can help it. I will do everything I can to expose the truth and bring the true murderers of the Blount family to justice. True justice. If there is anyone out there who cares enough to stop the murder of an innocent man, help expose the truth, and bring the true murderers of the Blount family to justice, please join my struggle and help me. I am in a desperate situation. I am scared beyond description. I don't want to be put to death for a crime I knew nothing about. Please help me. I may not be a perfect person, but I am not a murderer. I've been in a lot of trouble since 1989, but nothing like this. Please help me expose the truth. Sincerely and respectfully, Michael R. Toney, Huntsville, Texas.
It's really heartbreaking because at this point, I am not convinced this man did this. So, in fact, I'm kind of convinced he didn't. So, that's heartbreaking.
The case was turned over to the Texas Attorney General, and the state of Texas dropped all charges on November 17th, 2008.
So, how much time did he end up doing?
10 years.
So,
and was on death row for 10 years.
Right.
Like, death row for 10 years.
I'm so glad it has since been released, but I mean, come on. He paid for that.
Yeah. Michael Roy Toney was released on September 2nd, 2009, again, after spending more than 10 years on death row.
That's insane.
Right? After his release, Toney told reporters, quote, I don't know the Blount family. I have no hard feelings towards them. As a matter of fact, I'm very sympathetic to their situation. Their family members were killed in this crime and they need closure. End quote. Okay. Remember how I said this case was a total bummer? Like for everyone?
I'm bummed for him. I'm bummed for the Blounts. I'm bummed for everybody.
Yeah, well, it just gets worse. A month after his release.
No, stop.
Yeah.
Just stop.
Mm-hmm. Michael was tragically killed on October 3rd after he lost control of his pickup truck and was thrown from the vehicle, which killed him instantly.
Wow. Stephanie.
I hope everyone enjoys their mashed potatoes. But I feel like his story needs to be told. This is a total bummer, but I feel like everybody got the short end of the stick in this case. Everyone.
Wow. A month after he was released?
Yeah.
A month.
He's
finally free.
Yes. And he dies in a car accident.
So abusive childhood, terrible childhood, spends the majority of his adult life in prison and then dies a month after being released.
That's the gist.
Okay. Well, that's a lot.
It is a lot. So I'm going to change gears a little bit and go back to moving on to trying to get justice for the Blount family.
Yeah, let's talk about something a little more uplifting.
Exactly.
Justice, please.
Yeah, while Michael Roy Tony's release in 2009 was a blessing for him and his family, I mean, until obviously
for 30 days.
For 30 days. But once he was released, the case again was marked as unsolved. Even though, I mean, many would argue like it was still unsolved before.
Right.
But you know what I'm saying? Now they're back to
legally.
Now there's back to no one serving justice.
Well, but Michael believed he knew. Did he tell anybody what
well, apparently he was going to, but he died a month after he was released.
So he didn't.
So we don't know.
We don't know what he knew.
No. We never got to find out. In a 2008 interview with the Fort Worth, Texas Telegram, Susan Blount said of her late family members, quote, "Every year you kind of go through it again in your mind. You miss the people who are missing from your family every time you sit down to dinner or play a game." The Texas Attorney General stated that the case would be reviewed, but didn't comment as to whether they would seek to retry Michael for the crime. Susan Blount later stated that she had been told by authorities that the case would be retried, but they needed time to build a new case against Michael, which I don't even know
against Michael.
Yes, again, they were like, "Oh, that's the guy."
Okay, so they weren't even like, "Oops, we made a mistake." They were like, "No,
that's the guy." Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh!
Yes.
Okay.
Now, as far as the Blounts are concerned, Michael Tony was also the perpetrator.
Okay, so
they
fully
believe he's the guy.
Well, that's what they've been told.
That's what they've been told.
And it would sure be nice to have somebody to blame for this.
I kind of feel like that's the case. After Michael's release, Susan said, quote, "I don't mean to bring religion into this, but God works in mysterious ways. He got out of prison and he should not gotten out of prison." Ooh. So I feel like she's just angry and full of grief and sad. That's my opinion.
Well, here's the thing. If you believe somebody murdered your husband and children, and then they got out of prison, they were exonerated for it, and then died in a car accident a month later, you would
feel justified.
Think the same way.
Yeah. It's just not the best.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I truly believed this is the guy who did it, I think I'd feel the exact same way.
Yeah.
I just don't think he's the guy who did it.
I just don't think this guy did it either. According to a December 2008 Fort Worth Star-Telegram article, the bomb used consisted of 2 galvanized metal pipes filled with smokeless gunpowder, gasoline in a glass container, a model rocket motor, and a 9-volt battery. The FBI later categorized it as a, quote, angry, violent bomb intended to kill whoever opened the briefcase. The trigger was a simple vector mousetrap. Police have never commented as to whether or not the bomb matched others used in other crimes.
Because that would be interesting.
It would. As far as the idea that the bomb was part of an organized crime or drug hit, that actually may be accurate. It was later revealed that a man who lived in a trailer across from the Blounts was involved in drugs and weapon sales. He later told investigators that he believed the bomb was meant to be left outside his home.
Oh.
Since Michael's death, the case has become inactive. So they never even followed up on this.
Right. Well, because they had their guy.
It is currently not believed to be under investigation and remains officially unsolved. Police sources have told the media that it is still believed that the most likely scenario was that the bomb was placed at the wrong trailer that night, which made identifying the perpetrator difficult, which I do understand. Michael stated many times before his release that he had been in contact while on death row with people who knew who really carried out the bombings. He had said many times that he wanted to name these people once he was released, but no new information about that has come to light. I'm going to close this episode with words from Michael Tony. After being released from prison, he told reporters he doesn't think closure exists for anyone. Quote, "I don't see how the truth could ever enter the picture now. It's too distorted." End quote. And I hate to think that that's true, but in this case, it might be. Ick.
This is one I walk away from, and I just think I have all the questions. Stephanie and I have talked off mic about, why do certain things happen? Like, life sometimes just feels unfair. And this is one of those cases where this just feels really unfair.
For everybody?
For everybody.
Literally everybody.
This one just feels really just like, ugh.
Like hollow.
Nobody wins. Stephanie warned me that I was going to be.
I told her, I said, well, prepare to be totally bummed out.
Totally bummed out. And you were not exaggerating. Wow. This is really, ugh.
It's just bleak. That's the word that just keeps coming up for me. What a bleak case. People were really, a bomb
on Thanksgiving.
On Thanksgiving. What?
For the wrong family.
Even if it was for the right family, I'm just like,
well, sure, of course. Like, but
still,
but add to it that like they were just going about their business, went out to get ice cream, and mom wants to take a nap after cooking all day.
Right.
And
then children get blown up.
Ugh. And then a guy who's probably innocent, who's had a really
rough life. Exactly.
Goes to prison for a crime he didn't commit.
I don't believe he committed.
Finally gets released. And a month later is killed in a car accident.
Yes. And even after he's killed, nothing changes. Like,
no, he's the bad guy.
His
name is,
Now, I will say, if you look up Michael Toney, everyone uses him as an example of someone who was absolutely wrongly convicted.
Okay.
So I think it's really only, and even, the Texas Attorney General's office has been very quiet on this. I mean, they're just like, nope, no comment. So I think even they may be stepping back from their conviction that it was him, but they're not going to publicly acknowledge that. So at this point, the only ones I think that think he was still guilty are the Blount family. But honestly, what else do they have to go on? Because nobody else is investigating. They have no one else. There's nothing else.
Right.
And they have nothing else to cling to.
They've been told for decades that this is the person who did it.
Yeah.
And, again.
And you got, in these situations.
You want an answer.
Yeah. And in these situations, we've talked about it, how you really want somebody to blame.
And you want justice. Yeah. And this gives them that.
And if that gives them peace, then I say let them have it.
Yeah. I have nothing negative to say about her feeling the way she felt, because I absolutely believe I'd feel the same exact way if I were in her shoes and believed this was the person who killed my family.
Yeah. There was even, some thought that like Michael Toney's family deserved some like restitution or something like that. But of course he came from a family that doesn't deserve any of that.
Well, and I'm not even going to get into his mom.
Right. Well, that's a whole nother ball of wax. Yeah. So we're not giving her nothing. So it's like you can't even honor his, and I think that's
right.
You know what I'm saying? Like there's nobody even to kind of honor his memory except people like us,
right?
Talking about this case and talking about how this man who had a poor childhood, who made poor decisions as a young adult, got railroaded into being considered basically a family annihilator.
Right.
And I'm sorry, when did we figure that jailhouse informants could just get like all their charges dropped? Like, is that still a thing?
And wasn't one of them sexual assault against a child?
Yes.
But if you say what we want you to say,
yes,
you can. I mean, no, come on.
I'm like, I hope that's not a common practice. I mean, I know there are deals that you have to make with criminals sometimes in order to get to the greater good, but that's not one I would be willing to make.
No, especially for somebody who probably didn't do this.
Yes, that's right. It's not even like, I know I got the guy. And I love how they were openly like, I don't know, we don't have any motive. We just know he's the guy.
Maybe you can help us find a motive and we'll, give you some perks.
Exactly. No. Like, are there any charges we need to forgive you of? Because, we could work something out.
This is slimy, and it makes me, mad at the law enforcement, thinking they don't care, and the prosecutors, just like, this is just like everybody's slimy.
Yeah. And they were like, well, this disenfranchised guy that doesn't have a lot going for him, that doesn't even really have a family, well, that guy looks good for it.
Yeah, no, that's yucky. You're right. This was a really yucky one. Wow.
But I think for the memory of Michael Toney, and truly for justice for the Blount family, I mean, if you know what happened, please.
No, it's important.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
important. I'm glad you brought
Contact
this case.
the Texas Attorney General. But
as of right now, we have no happy ending.
No.
But that may not always be the case.
Yeah.
Like, I think I guess we'll never have a happy ending in this situation, but I think this is solvable.
Oh, it's possible if someone comes forward. Maybe somebody has a deathbed confession. It wasn't that long ago. No. 1985. It's still possible. All that being said, if you find a strange tan briefcase on your doorstep tomorrow night, probably don't bring it in. Just call a bomb squad. Just saying. Too soon? I don't know. Just saying. Maybe that's just general advice.
You're talking to someone who lived through, remember, like, the whole anthrax after 9/11 and all that stuff. And to this day, and then we went through like a mailbox bombing scenario at some point during our lifetime. I don't know if you remember that, but people were like putting random little explosives in people's mailboxes. You don't remember that?
Oh, kinda.
And so even though I have no reason to be targeted by anyone anywhere, I still sometimes flinch a little bit when I open my mailbox. So, I'm not opening a briefcase on my doorstep.
That's probably a good rule of thumb. It's funny. All I can think of, I was like, no, I did wipe down my groceries during COVID. different kind.
We've lived through a lot, Stephanie.
Literally, I'm like, what other death scares are we?
Oh my gosh. Us kids born in the 80s. I mean, Princess Di's death.
No wonder we all have anxiety.
No cell phones. I mean, we lived with no cell phones and no internet. Most of us didn't even have computers in our homes till we were at least teenagers.
Yeah, that's true.
We've been through it.
We've been through it. Oh boy. Well, you know what? So today, we only have maybe a few more days to donate towards our Branch of Hope for the month of November of 2024. So why don't you tell us about it?
All right. So this month's Branch of Hope recipient is 988 Lifeline. 988 Lifeline really focuses on helping those who are having suicidal thoughts. And if you are struggling with depression or suicidal thoughts and ideas, you can dial the 24/7 National Suicide Prevention Hotline at 988 or go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Evidence shows that providing support services and talking about suicide, reducing access to means of self-harm, and following up with loved ones are just some of the actions we can all take to help others. And 988 Lifeline has counselors available 24/7 via telephone, text, online chat, and deaf and hard of hearing services. So if you're one of our Patreons, you can feel really good knowing that a portion of proceeds from your membership to our Patreon is going directly to 988 Lifeline here in the month of November. And you can feel really good about it. Not only do you get great content and we're having a lot of fun over on our Patreon, but you can feel good knowing you're helping to support others, in these communities that we talk about every month.
Yeah. So. And who knows, we're coming up on a pretty sensitive time of the year. Time when sometimes people can feel alone. That's kind of magnified a little bit more. So I think the timing of this nonprofit is perfect.
Right.
Yeah. So listen, guys, help is only a phone call away. You are cared about and you're important. You are.
Yes, you are. You're loved. Somebody cares about you. I know.
Listen, I know not everybody is going to be celebrating the same way that you and I are, with lots of food and family, but we hope however you celebrate tomorrow that it's something that makes you feel gratitude and love and grateful for the life that you've been given and the blessings that you have. And we'll see you guys in December. It's coming.
It's here. Merry Christmas next week.
Yeah. It's been Christmas in your house all month already, Cynthia.
No. Christmas is like the biggest time of the year. I don't really like decorate my house for holidays and such, except for Christmas. And then it's just,
It's on.
it's on.
It's on.
It's on. So,
all right, Shiver Seekers, we love you guys so much. We hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
bye.
Bye-bye. This episode of The Dark Oak was created, researched, written, recorded, hosted, edited, published, and marketed by Cynthia and Stephanie of Just Us Gals Productions, and made possible by you, our shiver-seeking listener. Special thanks goes to Justice Himes for our incredible artwork and Ryan Crete for our amazing music.